Alright, so the lunchtime models and previous models before it have been showing that we have some pretty crazy troughs coming in and short waves. Pretty good kinematic madness here. That goes without saying. Now, if we get any sort of thermodynamics or any sort of moist sector colliding with these, we could have a big problem. What? Oh boy. Good evening, YouTube. Tire Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully you guys are doing well. So if you saw the preview at this point, you're probably thinking, what the heck is going on here? So, simply put, sometimes I associate the month May with the word mayhem. In previous years, it has lived up to that. This year wasn't as bad. But apparently, June seems to have had its own little bit of a weather identity crisis in a way, and we're getting increased threats of severe weather after this point. So far, the SPC hasn't put up any sort of areas in particular, but I do think that is going to change pretty quickly over the course of the next 3 days. Not to mention, and this is what gets me a lot, is the fact that we have a dry thunderstorm threat over areas just to the west of New York. Not something you see every day. So yeah, I think June is coming from May's title of potentially being associated with mayhem right now. Not to mention the air quality indexes over these regions here is pretty bad at the moment. The air quality is definitely, the air quality index, I should say, is rising above 100. Usually you want the low air quality to be in play because that's the good air quality. Usually when you get above about 50 or 60, sometimes you'll get air quality alerts. Once you get above 75, that's a big deal, to say the least. I know some people over in these areas, and they said they've had AQI of at least 100, 123 at some spots even. So, yeah, I don't know what June's on right now, but sheesh. But wait, there's more. So, I haven't used this particular parameter for the GFS in a long time. This is the vorticity map. This is a favorite of mine to kind of depict winter storms and sometimes severe weather threats too. But this focuses on spin in the atmosphere, especially towards the upper levels. And one thing that I've noticed is the increasing amount of spin that we have with these upcoming troughs that I've been discussing over the last couple of days here, particularly after the 9th. So here's our setup on the 9th. Nothing super impressive here, but as we go forward, pretty much after that, around the 10th, here's a little bit of an area of spin developing right here. This could result in some severe weather towards Texas. Then towards the 11th, Texas, Oklahoma now. And then as this trough moves in, guess what happens? Start to see a threat of severe weather across the panhandle, maybe even towards the western plains again. But wait, this doesn't stall out. Guess what happens on the 13th? Kansas, maybe Nebraska, Missouri for sure. Also looks like Oklahoma and Texas could get into the action too. And I've seen some pretty alarming soundings here as well. So over towards these regions here where we have that higher amount of spin, boom, look at that. Kinematically, this isn't an impressive setup. And then also the validity behind that, still questionable considering we're 174 hours out. But the fact that we're seeing this early on does raise a few eyebrows on this end here. But wait, there's still more. This setup seems to persist and maybe even go into the Ohio Valley at a point. So we could be watching the Ohio, maybe even the Tennessee Valley around the middle of the month for additional severe weather potential. Then we see another trough coming in here, and maybe the northern plains now gets into play. And this pattern just continues to persist onward from that point. Northern plains could be in play. Southern plains could be in play. Even the southeast could be in play. And then we can't even rule out maybe a setup or two possible towards the northeast. As of right now, hard to say, especially the further out we go on this run. GFS can go to 384 hours out, but the validity after about really 120 hours out can be questionable. So a lot of this could and very well will change. But the fact that I've seen some consistency with some of these troughs definitely leads me to have some concerns with this. So let's make sure that we're staying weather aware over these regions here. Even though right now we're only looking more so at one part of really what's supposed to be more so two-part setups. Or that's what I had been doing until today. So again, we're going to take one more look at the kinematic setup here, which is basically discussing the wind profile, spin, etc., lift as well. But these troughs are going to provide lift, especially towards the upper to mid levels of the atmosphere. But the other side of this is the thermodynamics, which is temperature, dew point, etc., and lapse rates as well. Or that's just a little bit of it. That's more so the tip of the iceberg. If I tried to go into every little detail, we'd be here forever. But just based off of what you see here, and this is a good indicator of where the jet stream is, things definitely look like they're about to pick up here. So now, let's go ahead and take a look at the temperatures here. We have already had warm air in place across a lot of these regions for a bit here. And this isn't going to change anytime soon, especially towards the heart of the country where we're getting 70s, 80s pretty easily. In fact, we're getting into 80s and 90s at this point. Look at that. This is at the 9th towards West Texas, 89 degrees. And these little blotches right here are actually indicators of where thunderstorms do form and put the temperature back down just slightly. And then, of course, the same can be said over towards the Kansas, Nebraska areas, but the highest potential of severe right now, to me, looks like it's going to be over towards Texas. What kind of risk factor we will see with that is still unknown. I lean towards maybe at best a slight risk. Could be upgraded to enhanced, but other parameters have to come together. It's not the most pronounced setup on the 9th or the 10th. It's really not until the 11th where I would start to be more concerned. But notice, these warm temperatures aren't going anywhere. So temperature-wise, we're in a pretty well set up environment for severe weather. Look at the 21st in particular. 90-degree temperatures all the way into Missouri, Kansas. Triple digits starting to sneak their way into Oklahoma and Texas now. So you combine that with dew points, any form of lift and kinematics, we could have some serious problems on our hands here, excuse me. But here's the moist sector, and pretty much any of these areas in the blue tends to be a hot spot if you combine it with the other parameters that I was talking about. So I'm going to mark the area that I would be interested in the most right now. Starting out, it would be more so towards this region. So let's go ahead and move forward here. Uh-oh, it's not working. There we go. Just being a little difficult right now. But watch what happens here. I'm going to get the time frame back in. So this moist sector persists throughout this area, starting out. And I was going backwards, actually. But as we get towards the 9th, notice how the moist sector pushes off to the west here. And it's almost like it collides with some boundary of some sort right here. And then from that point on, it just continues to persist over this region. That is a big problem, especially as we head towards the 13th. And this purple area is where we're getting those 70-degree dew points. So you combine that with this, and what you end up getting is potential for severe weather, very unstable environment. This sounding isn't super impressive. I'm more or less just using it as an example. But when you have 3,000 plus CAPE, usually that's considered a pretty explosive environment for severe weather. There's a lot of energy in the atmosphere. And this persists even as we go past the mid-month here. And if anything, we start to see these moist sectors starting to develop even further to the north now. So what ends up happening as we get later into the month, we start to see setups exist more so towards the northern plains. And we could even see a good old-fashioned case of what we like to call corn sweat here. I'll get into corn sweat in another video, but basically the corn and some of the corn stalk off of some of these regions out towards the Midwest can influence the dew points and humidity. How that actually forms, like I said, I'll have to do that for another video because it's a lot to talk about. But simply put, with all those parameters in place, severe weather definitely seems like it could be in play here. It's not really much I can really say as far as parameters are concerned at this point in time, given how far out we are, what the heck we could see exactly. But the fact in the matter is the threat is not necessarily real at this point just yet. But there are some signs there we could be seeing things begin to unfold. Of course, it'll be more interesting once we get more model runs here and additional models within range of some of these events, especially once we get into the convective models. I think that will be really telling as to what could come our way. Even then, there's a margin for error, so to speak. There's one other thing I'm trying to look for here before we get off here, and then I'm gonna go for that really quick. Dang it, I can't find it. I think that's on the Euro only. Okay, yes, that is Euro high res. I had to go for the Euro real quick. I couldn't find what I was looking. So I was actually had to go to the Euro model here because